Hey guys, so in this video we're going to be reviewing how to cite your sources in your text. So when you're quoting or when you're paraphrasing, we're going to be talking about how to correctly cite those sources. So the website we'll be using is Purdue OWL APA. Easiest way to access this is to just Google Purdue OWL APA and click on the first link that pops up, the general formatting. And now we're going to look in the left menu. You're going to see a few different options under general format. So we have In-Text Citations to Basics and In-Text Citations Author/Authors. The one that we're going to be focusing on is In-Text Citations to Basics, but I just want to briefly show you what is under Author/Authors. So under this section, if you have any variation to the rule and you're unsure about what to do and how to cite that source, this lists out for you if you have a work by one author, or if you have two authors, three or more authors, an unknown author, organization, two or more works in the same parentheses, etc. So it basically breaks down how to cite these different author options, if you don't know who the author is, etc. So you can take a look at that to see whatever is applicable to the source that you're using. But again, for now, we're going to be focusing on in-text citations to basics. So there are two basic ways of citing your sources in your text. The first way is to list the author's name in what we call a signal phrase. And a signal phrase is just it's a short sentence or a short introduction to your quote. So this indicates that you are about to state a quote or give a quote. Now, so in this example, we have according to Jones, 1998. So we are using the last name of the author, and we are, in parentheses, we are listing the year that the article was published. So we'll have, because we're listing the author's last name and the year of publication in the signal phrase, we're not going to list them in our parenthetical citation at the end of the quote. So last name of author, year of publication, then we have our quote. Anything that you are taking from the original source must be in quotation marks. If you are changing anything, then it's no longer a quote, and you have to rephrase it so that you're putting everything in your own words and it's a paraphrase, in which case you will not be using quotation marks. But if you're taking something from the original source, you have to use quotation marks around it to indicate that it's someone else's words, and it has to be written exactly as it's written in the original source, no grammatical errors or spelling mistakes or anything of the sort. And then after the quote, you're going to list a page number in your parentheses, and then your period goes after the citation, because the citation is a part of this sentence. So for the page number, you're going to put a lowercase p, period, and then the page number. If you do not have a page number, so you use page numbers if you have like a book or a PDF, something that has stable page numbers, so no matter what device you're opening it on, those numbers won't change. However, if you're using like an online article, the pages might not be numbered, or depending on what device you're using, the information might appear on different pages. So for online sources that do not have stable page numbers or do not have pages, you're going to be using the paragraph number instead. So as we can see in this example, we have the last name of the author and then the year of publication. This is a paraphrase, that's why it's not in quotation marks. But after your paraphrase or after your quote, you're going to put in parentheses PARA, period, and then the paragraph number. So this person was paraphrasing paragraphs 4 and 5. That's why they have PARAS, period. That means paragraphs 4 to 5. But if you were paraphrasing or quoting from just one paragraph, it would be PARA, period, 4 or 5 or whatever it is. So that's the first way of citing your sources in text. It's to list the author's name in the signal phrase. The second way of citing your source is by not listing the author in the signal phrase and instead listing them in the parenthetical citation. So for example, we have here, she stated, quote, and then we have our quote in quotation marks, and then we have our parenthetical citation. So we have the last name of the author, comma, the year of publication, comma, the page number, indicated by lowercase p, period, and then, whatever the page number is. And that's in parentheses because we did not mention the author in the signal phrase. So you can use that parenthetical citation immediately after the quote, as this person did here, or you can put it at the end of the sentence. Even if the quote ends here, you can put it at the end of the sentence, as long as this idea is still related to what the author was saying. So this here is a very basic way that they did this, is by just saying she stated. So I'll show you another example that's a bit more complex than that by looking at the sample paper. So in the sample paper, we can see from this quote, by the mid-2000s, researchers had begun to characterize sets in terms like, quote, the predominant measure, etc. And then they have the author's last name, their publication, and the page number in the parentheses after the quote, because they did not mention them in the signal phrase. So this is a great example of how they did not mention the author in the signal phrase. This is more a paraphrase of the author's work, or just a short introduction to kind of contextualize this quote without mentioning the author's name. So as you become more complex writers, your goal is to do more writing like this, because it makes your writing more interesting. If you have all of your quotes, if you introduce all of your quotes by saying, Jones stated, Jones argued, Jones found, or according to Jones, then your writing is going to start sounding very repetitive. So no one format is the correct format. You can use any of these. But what you want to do is you want to kind of mix and match your writing. So in mix and match your citation approach. So sometimes when you're introducing your quote, you're going to introduce it like this, where you say according to Jones. Sometimes you might say Jones found, and then other times you'll have a paraphrase or a short sentence that contextualizes the quote in your signal phrase, and then you give your quote. Now, as a side note, if you are starting a quote but it's not the beginning of the author's sentence, then you're going to use the ellipses, which is 3 dots, to indicate that you've removed words from the beginning of the sentence. If you're inserting words or inserting something into the quote, you're going to use square brackets like they did here. So what they did in this part, they removed words from the quote, but they also inserted ellipses to indicate that they're removing words. So you have to put those ellipses in square brackets. But even if you do that, your sentence still has to flow, and it still has to make sense and has to reflect the author's intent with their work. But yeah, those are the basics of how to cite. We have 2 basic ways. You have your author is mentioned in the signal phrase, or you do not mention your author in the signal phrase, and instead you mention them in the parenthetical citation. And if we do not have stable page numbers, we're going to be citing the paragraph number instead.